Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Sometimes I go by the handle, the bow, and the chapeau, sometimes known as the fine fella in the fedora. But above all else, I am called one thing right now, your host. Welcome to our latest session of Chattin on the Porch. We are on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we are on Twitter. So if you haven't done it yet, and believe me, I have been seeing all the tweets, I've been seeing all the Truth Socials, I've been seeing all the Gettrs. If you haven't sent it out to your friends yet, tell them get in here because Trippett has got one heck of a guest tonight, and you definitely will not want to miss this party. So let me start dropping the volume. I see people are already dropping comments in YouTube. I see people are stopping by on Rumble. This is great. Glad to have each and every last one of you here. This is going to be fun this evening. I have figured out a handful of things in the brief little time that I've been doing content creation, that everything happens right when it's supposed to. And my guest and I have finally, this has now happened. And not anybody's fault, not her fault, not my fault. She's got a channel. I've got a channel. She's got a life. I've got a life. Well, okay, she's got a life. But anyway, you get the point. Finally, how it worked out was she sent me a message and said, hey, give me a date in January and I'll come on the channel. Like, all right, we're going to do it on this date and this time and this night. She's like, cool, I'll see you then. So without much further ado, let me at least do some introductions. If you have ever had the occasion to read parts of the New Testament of the Bible, you may have come across a verse that goes something like this. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should answer every man. And I'm pretty sure that somewhere along the way, my guest took that verse and made it one of her life's mottos. Now, don't mistake that graciousness is weakness, because this lady knows in what she believes and is prepared to defend it unto her dying breath. But she will not do so in an ungracious, unkind manner. Originally, she grew up in the South. She's moved all around the country and now calls her home in the free Republic of Texas. Not only has she gone on a geographic journey, she's gone on an intellectual journey, which makes part of the charm that is her channel on YouTube and Rumble. Folks, I could go on all night giving positive accolades about this lady, but I'd be depriving you of the opportunity to meet one of the coolest women in the whole of social media. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the host of Deprogrammed, Miss Keri Smith.
Hello, that's quite an intro. Thank you.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Please.
No, I was just going to say, I'm not that familiar with that verse, but it does resonate with me because I need to learn that more. So thank you for thinking I'm gracious. I fail many times. I was like, oh no, somebody watching this is going to be like, she was a butt to me, so.
Well, now see, that's all a matter of interpretation, much like the Bible in one sense, because it's graciousness depends on which end of the argument you're on, the giving or the receiving. So, one person's, he was a butt to me. Another person's like, oh man, she was fantastic. I wish she'd do more of that.
But thank you. I really like that verse. I just looked it up.
Colossians, if I remember correctly. So if my memory serves me right. Well, how are you, dear? It has been a day since we've sat down and talked with each other.
I'm good. I am busy, as is everyone. I'm not here to say I'm the busiest. I am busy, and I seem to know a lot of people who are in this state right now. December didn't slow down for me like it usually does, so and part of that has to do with us renovating this house. So we were trying to get my office studio done by January 1st, and we're not yet finished. We're about a few days away. I'm waiting on an electrician who's coming in a couple of days to put in an outlet. That took a while to get that date locked in, and I hope, fingers crossed, he comes. And then to hang the chandelier, and then I have a little bit of minor caulking and staining left to do after that. And that, I think, and we have to hang the curtains. But everything else, let me tell you, this room. Okay, this room, we took out. This house was built in 1914, so we're doing each room as we save money as we have time, and we're doing a lot ourselves and with our friend David, who's a contractor. And except for things like, where you need an electrician or a plumber, what have you. So in this room, there was a chimney that went up. It's a 2-story house. My husband and David took the chimney out, which took 4 days of carrying bricks down in a bucket. And they took it out, the whole thing out by hand. Then we had to patch the floor. They patched the floor with some of this shiplap you see up here in my temporary stream location.
Right.
And shiplap from other areas where we cut doorways. So they patched the floor of that. We had to sheetrock where took the chimney, the mantle out. We also ripped out a very narrow closet, so we had to sheetrock that. Took out an exterior door that wasn't needed, and sheetrock that. They did the sheetrocking. Then my husband and I did the mudding and the sanding, and and of the ceiling. We had to patch a lot of places, take down all the wallpaper first. I forgot that part. There's so many terrible parts. And then and then we had to do the floors. My husband sanded them, and then I stained them and sealed them, and and I did all the caulking. And here's the thing I'll say about it. I have my favorite parts of every time we do a room. Like, I really enjoy the painting, and I enjoy staining floors, and I enjoy varnishing and stuff. But I have my least favorite, which is also taking down wallpaper and sanding. I hate the grit. So it's been really long. We're both exhausted, and we're almost done. We're almost done. I can't even speak. We're almost done at the very end. And it's kind of a ramble. You said, "How are you?" And I'm like, "Let me tell you, tired."
Hey, as I tell every guest who comes on my front porch, it's like, this is the oasis. I had Culture Casino on here one time, and I asked him a question, and I love Culture to death, and this is not any kind of criticism, but you give Culture, you show him a wide open field of space where he can just spread out his answer to something, and he's gone. He's like good for about 10 minutes, and finally he got done and looked at me and said, "I'm so sorry, that went on for a long time." I was like, "Dude, I'm going to give you all the room to run you want." So that's the way I look at it. When you come here, you say what's on your mind and go with it. We're all about having fun here and relaxing and enjoying ourselves and engaging in good, fun conversation. Which, by the way, someone in chat has already asked the question as it relates to this room you're renovating. Are you sure you didn't have a tunnel in there you had to take out or something? I mean, just saying.
Hey, Ruben. Well, we were joking. It's going to be a trapdoor too, but no, we already sealed it. But some of the people who watch the program know we had a raccoon living in the walls for a while. The
You had
raccoon
what?
is a raccoon, and because the exterior of the house needs a lot of work. There's a lot of holes and a lot of wood. We're actually starting that project. That's something we're not doing ourselves. We're hiring some people later this month. But the raccoon, there were 2 holes in the balcony, and we had heard something in the wall. And one night I was sitting out on the front porch. I was sitting on the front porch, and I felt something staring at me. I felt something looking at me. I felt it. It's hard to explain. I just felt it. And I looked up, and the raccoon was peering down out of the inside of the hole and just staring at me. And I was like, oh, and then he came running down and scooted off the porch. And so then we knew it was a raccoon. So then I put out a live trap. I caught 2 different cats. I never caught the raccoon. He also is so smart. He would take my bait, like my peanut butter jar, out of the cage without getting caught, and then go enjoy the butter on the other side of the house where I found the container.
Oh my word.
He's very smart. But now we're pretty sure he's gone. So we still have the holes. Well, we were sure a few months ago. So we still have the holes. But now there's something else in the walls, and I believe it's these 2 black cats, because I've heard them having cat fights in the wall, and I think they're getting in under the house. So now we have these cats in the wall, and on the one hand, they keep rodents away, I guess, which is great. But on the other hand, my dog can't stand, he hates cats, and he can hear them. So when they come to do the exterior, we just had a guy here today talking about underneath the house what we're going to do with insulation and stuff. It's about to get very cold. And anyway, long story short, in the next month or 2, as we start to work on the exterior, I think we'll figure out what's in the walls, and we'll seal up all the entryways. So That's our other adventure.
I was going to say it's never a dull moment in the free Republic of Texas. I have to give you
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
By the way, folks, in case you're wondering, I am wearing I'll call my about a step short of being a full on cowboy outfit. I got a black vest, a white shirt, and a black fedora. The lady, as you might notice, is wearing a black wide brim and has her normal sense of fabulous style. We did not coordinate this, by the way, in case anybody out there is wondering. It's not like we were like, all right, what are you wearing? What are you wearing? I don't know. What do you want to wear? So, no, we didn't do any of that. But I do have to ask that this does bring up a question that has been on my mind now for a while.
You look very handsome, by the way, but go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, I some people say I do clean up good, and I don't disagree with them. So there you go. How many hats do you own, if I may ask?
Oh, I don't maybe 15. Well, if you count like little ladies' hats from the 20s and 30s, maybe more than that. I don't know. But I'm not really. Here's what's funny. I love your hats. I'm a hat person, obviously. People call me that because I wear them a lot. But I don't know as much about them as I do cowboy boots. I used to sell handmade cowboy boots, and I'm not as much of a hat nerd as people would think because I don't wear them all the time. Maybe 75% of the time.
Okay.
But cowboy boots, I wear hand cowboy boots every day. I have 13 pair of handmade, and they're all vintage, like the ones I was wearing today. These are 1940. They're all like 1940s or 50s styles. This is
Mhm.
Pee-wee, which is the shorter one, and this boot needs a
Aw.
lot of love. I was gonna polish them later, but so I used to sell boots, and I know a lot more about boots and can tell you off the top of my head exactly how many. Like 13 or you know, but because people don't see your feet on YouTube unless you're a feet channel, then they don't know that they don't call me a boot person.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out new and interesting ways to grow and expand, my social media reach. I don't think I'm quite brave enough yet to like stand up and like, it's like no, let the chair hide a lot of sin.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
to tell a story to the audience because I always love how you and I actually met for the first time. Do you remember this? Actually met face to
At
face.
the comedy club with Chrissy Mayer's show, the Compound Media comedy show in Florida.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I was thinking about this the other day because folks, I'll start this off and I'll let the lady finish it. The Keri was part of something called Content House that Chrissy Mayer puts on, and a lot of you have probably seen it. And to kick everything off that weekend, they had a comedian of the compound show at the Improv Club in Orlando, Florida. Well, I got there a little bit early from having had dinner downstairs at a restaurant, another place. And, I sit down and I'm sitting there not really knowing anybody, but I know who people are. Well, through the back of the room, going toward the back corner of the Improv Club, goes Keri, Mike Harlow, and another gentleman um, to a seat. Well, I hadn't done something what I had done next. I had not done it in a long time, and I thought, if ever I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it on an adventure like this. So I flagged down this waiter, and I said, I said, on your 6 o'clock, you see that lady back there in the wide brim brown hat? And he's like, yes, sir. I want you to go over to her table and give the following message. He said, okay, what is it? Tell her exactly a beau in a chapeau would like to buy you and your table around. He looked at me and went, what? I
He
said,
probably said, "What's a bow? What's a chapeau?"
yeah, yeah, well, not quite that bad, but almost. He gave me that look like, ah, ah. Um, I said, a beau in a chapeau would like to buy you and your table around. He's like, okay. So it takes him about 5 or 10 minutes, and he goes back there, and I'm watching the whole thing because I've done this before, and I love watching the reaction. So I'll let you pick it up from there.
Well, uh what was my reaction? I mean, I remember this happening. I just don't remember what did I do specifically. Was there something funny?
I'm watching the whole thing, and the waiter leans over, he gives you this message, and your head goes like this.
Okay.
And 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 with the flourish of a true Shakespearean theatrical fellow, I stand up and give it one of these.
Uh, yeah.
And you bounce up out of your chair, you come around the long way, all the way around to my side of the room, and you look at me and go, "Are you the front porch conservative?" I said, "Do I owe you money?" Well, no. Yeah, I'm front porch. And at that point, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it is you. And you invited me back to your table. That's where I met you. That's where I met Mike Harlow. That's where I met Christian. And the four of us just hung out together watching the show. And that's how we
We
met.
had a great
So,
time.
oh
And
heavens, yes.
I love your style. As I already said, you look very
Oh Lord.
dashing. I think men and women should take a little more care with how we dress than in the people previous generations, people used to pay a lot more attention to that. And now I think people are sort of lazy and all and and so, they don't get dressed up unless they're for I mean, they'll say, "Why are you dressed up?" a lot of times when they go out. I'm like, "Dressed up. I'm just wearing something that I like."
Yeah.
But you definitely make an effort, which I appreciate, like your vest, your hat, and the way that sending a drink over like I'm in some black and white film noir. So I love it. It's so old fashioned. So thank you for that.
No, no,
And
no, no. Thank you. Thank you. You're very kind to me.
can I tell you something? I'm working on a piece right now about dressing up. And there was some of the stuff I was looking at. I was looking at this study about how during the Great Depression, you know where the expression glad rags came from?
No.
It was during the Great Depression, and people would make an extra effort to dress up nice when they left the house because they were going through such hard times economically, and it was sort of a way of uplifting the mood. And that's another reason why I think psychologically, I think it benefits us to put in a little effort. It's not just because I like to see pleasing things and to wear pleasing things and to see pleasing things on others, but it makes you feel good. It
Yeah.
it neuroscientists can point to this. It makes you feel better. That's why when they say when you're depressed, they say try and do the little things, right? Like try and get out of bed for a severely depressed person. That's a monumental task. And if you can do that, great. Now try and take a shower. Try and put on some clothes that are not old sweatpants that you slept in. Why? Because it changes your mood, actually
Yeah.
makes you feel better.
Yeah. Absolutely. I saw something on Twitter the other day, and it was posted by Jack Posobiec, and I commented on it, and you responded to it. It was in Belarus, and I think it was during Christmas. This gigantic ball,
Mm.
ladies dressed in just gorgeous, gorgeous dresses, and all the gentlemen were either in formal tuxedo or white tie and tails. This and they're dancing a very formal waltz, and I was like, "Good grief, wouldn't I love to see this catch on again in America?" I mean, talking about making an effort to dress up.
Yes.
New Year's Eve, and there I tried, if possible. I didn't so much do it this year, but, well, yeah, I actually did now that I mention it. But anyway, I try to make it a point to go out on New Year's, and if you do, the custom is, or at least the custom that I've always been taught was the men should dress up. I have gone out and seen guys, and I'm not faulting anybody because everybody's got, their different circumstances, and everybody's, I get it. Okay. I don't expect everybody to do everything exactly the way I would do it.
Right.
I saw guys walking around on New Year's Eve. Their ladies look great. They're these gorgeous dresses, that look very appropriate, whatever. And these guys are like walking around in flannel shirts and blue jeans and ball caps. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking at them, I'm thinking to myself, dude, your lady has at least put forth the effort to
Yeah.
realize the occasion. Do the same. Really?
Yes.
Come on, step it up. It's
Yeah.
not going to hurt you. One
And it's
night.
It's not that hard for gentlemen, actually. What
Oh.
sucks is that there aren't as many choices, but that also means it's not that difficult to dress up in a casual outfit pretty easily. I mean, in
Mhm.
Texas, it's funny, my husband and I talk about this sometimes. You will see, he's a musician, he plays a lot of the wineries out in Hill Country, and you will see couples there on dates where the woman is dressed up and the guy is wearing, sneakers or, oh my gosh, sometimes they wear those sandals. I hate those sandals.
Yeah.
And they then they have like a what's that it's like a visor, it's like Titleist or something? Titleist?
Titleist,
Okay,
yes.
okay, whatever. Titleist visor, and it's just it's not that anything's wrong with any of those individual items of clothing, but when you're on a date with a lady who's dressed up, it doesn't
Yeah.
go. It's like, if you put on a nice pair of cowboy boots, you dress any outfit up. A
Yeah.
nice pair of boots. If
Yeah.
you put on a nice hat, you dress any outfit up. You can still have your t-shirt on with a cowboy hat, and it dresses it up like that. Or a fedora or any kind of hat. Other than the sports cap, it depends. It can be dressed up, but it's much easier to do it with a classic hat than a sports cap. So this is funny. I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I never get to talk about it on camera. So thank
Oh,
you.
no, I mean, I get it. I mean, believe me, it's like, at the end of my post, I said I was born in the wrong century, and I'm thoroughly convinced of that. I really am. Not that I mean, if I could take all the conveniences of the 21st century and go back to say maybe the 18th, okay, we got a negotiable deal here. I mean, I'm good with that. You know, I mean, I often wonder if men like Thomas Jefferson or John Adams or any of those very educated men would have had access to the speed of information that is today. I mean, they did remarkable things in their time. I'm sitting here going, what would it have been like? The stuff they could have done would have been extraordinary. And before we go on, I have been asked by a member of the audience to pose you a very important philosophical question, and it has to do with bacon. Um,
Robert. Hey, speaking of, let me say hello, Robert Lowry. Robert and Ruben from the chat. And I think Cajun Corey also, yes,
Yes,
we're
yes, he
we're
was.
all in Florida at that same, because you know what? Friday Night Tights was and Nerdrotic and Geeks
Mhm,
and Gamers were
mhm.
having their meetup. So there's so many people there. That's so cool that there are people in the chat who were there as well with that story you told.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Robert knows I don't like bacon, and I know some people think
What?
that's weird. I hate bacon.
Oh, how we're girl, we're gonna have to talk about this.
I know my husband thinks it's weird too. I don't I think I was born, I'm missing whatever gene it is that, even when I was a kid and growing up in South Carolina, my parents would, in the South, in a lot of places, it's considered a part of a normal, healthy meal. It's not considered an indulgence, it's considered what you should eat. And so that was one of those things they would say, you got to finish your bacon before you can leave the table. I'm like, so I would hide it in a napkin and ball it up and put it behind the curtain on the window next to my seat. And
Oh
one
my
time,
goodness.
my mom found a molded napkin full of bacon and cooked carrot. I hated cooked carrots back then. I love cooked carrots now, but yeah, bacon, I don't know. It's just even the smell of it makes me want to vomit. Like it's nauseating. Isn't
Okay,
that
well,
weird?
if ever we meet for breakfast, it's like, okay, don't get her bacon. No, dude, no bacon. You can bring whatever else, just no bacon. All right, so there you go. So let's talk about that. You grew up in the South
Mhm.
and then moved around various parts of the country. I mean, I know parts of your backstory, and would you walk me through from where you grow up? What was it like? What was your family like? Tell me where you've lived, and how is it that you came to be in the Free Republic of Texas?
That's a great way of putting it. The Free Republic, which you haven't been here. Isn't that you haven't been to Texas? Isn't that what you said?
Yes, I must confess, ladies and gentlemen, that I have not been to the Free Republic of Texas,
You
and this
have
is something yep.
to
Mhm.
remedy this. Okay. Well, yeah, so I grew up in South Carolina, and then I went to a science and math high school. So at the age of 15, and a lot of states, like South Carolina is one of these states, it's always ranked near the bottom in terms of education. Like, I think we're number 50 a lot of the time. I don't know. And so in a lot of the states that haven't done as well when it comes to academic achievement, they started these things called governor schools for science and math. They also have them for, I think, the arts, but the one I went to was a science and math one, and it's taxpayer funded. If you get in, you go and live there for 11th and 12th grade. And their goal for paying for this, the reason the state is willing to pay for it is they're trying to take supposedly the best and brightest from the state and then give them an excellent education in 11th and 12th grade to really help push them out into, at that time, to find a good college, and then to hopefully come back to the state and bring that talent with them and invest in the state. The idea is it will pay forward. So I got to do that. 15, I left and moved into this residential school. It was amazing. It was the best education I got. It was better than I ended up going to Duke in North Carolina, one state over. It was better education than what I got at Duke. And I did not encounter woke or social justice ideology there, although I have heard from many current students or some current students that is there now.
Right.
I encountered it at Duke, so I'm very fortunate I got to go to that school. And then when I got to Duke, which is a great school, but my major was biological anthropology and anatomy with a certificate in primatology. And I wanted to be Diane Fossey. I wanted to study primates. That's what I wanted to do. I did a women's studies minor, which was my downfall because it was through that women's studies minor that I took all of these other like critical race theory classes, queer theory classes, women's studies, which is now called gender studies, and so I was taking all of this social justice stuff, and it sort of became it was a brainwashing. It was a slow form of brainwashing. I thought I was just learning about how the world worked. I had recently abandoned the faith that I had grown up with. And there was this hole there, that's the way I view it now, for a belief system, for a way of looking at the world. And
Sure.
so I picked up this way of looking at the world, which says the best way to look at the world is a struggle for power among competitive identity groups, and that we need to redistribute power among identity groups so that we can reach equity and equality. And so they divide everything into oppressor and oppressed, or privileged and marginalized. They use those interchangeably. So, this at the time, this was mostly just in academia. That's where I picked it up. It was in nonprofit because I worked I volunteered for Amnesty International, and I learned a lot of stuff in Amnesty as well. And then it escaped the colleges like a virus, and it hit now it's what a lot of us who do cultural commentary, whether it's cultural commentary that's focused on politics or video games or comic books or entertainment or knitting or whatever it is, this ideology, this religion has infiltrated all of mainstream society. It's infiltrated the corporate world. It's infiltrated churches, hobby groups, the political parties. I've been following this Boeing story. It's in all of the corporations now. They're rewarded. They have financial incentives to push woke social justice crap. What they're pushing specifically is the DEI part of what's called DEI. But anyway, I picked all this stuff up in the late 90s when I was in college. And when I came out of college, instead of doing anything with my degree, I took some time. I thought I would take some time off before grad school, and I ended up working with Margaret Cho, the comedian. So I moved to LA, to Los Angeles, not Louisiana. I moved to LA, and I Um, I started working with Margaret because I liked that her comedy addressed all of these social justice woke issues that I was now a true believer in. So I was like, oh, she addresses racism and sexism and homophobia, and she's like using comedy to end depression, to end these bigotries. And so over time, I spent, let's see, that was like 2000. I spent about 15 years in entertainment, and I worked almost primarily. I eventually started my own company with a partner, and I worked almost primarily with comedians who pushed social justice ideology in comedy.
Let me ask you a question, because I always wondered why it was you had such an affinity for comedians. Did you? I mean, today you now have in your life Chrissy Mayer, Gino Biscotti, Anthony Cumia, other individuals who are in comedy, but they're definitely not of the woke mindset.
Right.
When you talk to Anthony about what he thinks about woke. Let's see what kind of reaction you get with that one. But when you back when you were working in around comedians back then, when you came across someone like an Anthony or a Chrissy, ideologically speaking, was the reaction was like, what in the world happened to you? Or was it like, I'm just not gonna have anything to do with you. You're just dumb.
Oh, I thought they were evil. And actually, I didn't know Christy back then. I don't know if she was doing comedy back then or not. But Anthony Cumia I had heard of because he had the Anthony and Opie show.
Sure.
And it was just like with, Steven Crowder, who's a comedian, conservative comedian also, and has a show. It was just like with any conservative commentator, when you're in that woke cult, that social justice cult, you don't go to primary sources. You don't actually read the books of the people that you hate. You don't actually listen to their podcasts. You don't listen to their comedy. Your opinions are all received opinions when you're in a cult. And so I never sat down and listened to, let's use Anthony Cumia as an example. I never listened to Opie and Anthony, Opie and Anthony. But I would hear the stuff that made it through into my woke bubble, where whenever he would get piled off or something, and I would read that, and it would tell me what to think about him. Same thing with Steven Crowder. And so I thought they were both misogynistic, racist, backwards, bigots. I had all these opinions that I hadn't done the work to own. And it's so funny because I've since met Anthony Cumia at some of the content houses and some other stuff. And I think he's uproariously funny. And
Absolutely.
And I never, I cut myself off from even knowing that. It was the same with commentators like, Ben Shapiro. I had never listened to him speak, but I thought I knew what he was. I thought I knew during the 2016 presidential election. I never listened to Trump speeches, but I thought I knew what he was. I had a lot of opinions that were not mine about him. And when you start leaving a cult and you start actually going to the original source and trying to form your own opinion, well, sometimes you'll come away with the same opinion you held before, or maybe a slightly different one, but sometimes you'll come away with opposite opinion. I can't believe I thought this guy was XYZ, was I never bothered to interact with them. They were off limits. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So you're out in California, you're working with comedians, and you're in the midst of this ideological bubble, as you would refer to it. So what brought you geographically and ideologically? Let me try that again. This is really a professional show. Ideologically out of what it was you were in. What started that process?
Well, I'm going to try and tell the abbreviated version. I in 2016 during the election, I started to see things because social justice, my cult, was ramping up. This is around the time it broke and became mainstream. And it's weird because when it became mainstream, it picked up a lot of adherents, of course, because now it's popular and everyone jumps on. But it also woke a lot of people up. It woke me up because there were a lot of things that got ramped up, and it became apparent that there were certain things that were part of it that were not liberal and that were not bugs of the ideology, but features of the ideology. So during the 2016 election, for example, or the election season, at one point I saw on YouTube video after video of leftist liberals, people supposedly on my side, the political spectrum, physically attacking Trump supporters outside of Trump rallies, like going to the rallies specifically to assault people, to bully them. I saw people surround a girl outside of these glass windows and doors as she was coming to a rally, pelting her with eggs, screaming at her. I saw a guy bloodied with a brick, as they chased him down coming out of the rally. And it was startling and emotionally it affected me because I didn't know, first of all, I didn't know this was happening. And I was in such a bubble and such an echo chamber that I actually thought, without ever having seen footage of it, I thought Trump supporters are violent. There's all this violence happening at Trump rallies, and once I saw these videos of people on my side doing the violence, and I started trying to find videos, I'm like, okay, well, it must be videos of Trump supporters doing this and chasing down Hillary people and bloodying them and pelting them with eggs and stuff. And I couldn't find that. And so that shook me to my core. It left me crying also because I felt like this isn't me. These people are not, they don't speak for me. This is terrible. And so that didn't, you don't snap out of a cult overnight. You don't get into it overnight. It's gradual. So gradually, that was one thing that shook the foundation of my belief that I knew what was happening in the world, right? And then there was the Dallas shooting where at a Black Lives Matter rally, a sniper killed a lot of police officers. And the reaction in my social justice or woke echo chamber online was basically a lot of people saying stuff like, well, all white guys are going to have to die. It is a revolution kind of thing. And just completely cool with it. At the same time, though, officially trying to distance it from BLM, but condoning it. It's both. And that shook me. And then when Trump was elected, I started to see just all insanity break loose. Now, I was one of the people that cried the night he won. I still wasn't out of the cult completely yet. I had started questioning things and interacting with different thinkers and starting to watch a Ben Shapiro video now and again and figure out what I thought. I was slowly coming out of it, but I still thought he was a demagogue and I cried and everything. But I did not agree with what I saw happening among my friends on social media and social justice people who were in the journalism space, writing opinion pieces, condoning violence, basically saying it's okay to punch a Nazi and everyone who voted for Trump is a Nazi. So, okay, it's okay to be physically violent towards half the country. This isn't okay. And if I tried to say something about it, I was mobbed by my own side. So that was a real wake-up call. And then of course I wrote to Jordan Peterson. That was the other thing. So I had seen a video of his that a friend had called transphobic, and I didn't find it to be transphobic. I thought he made a great point about compelled speech. And I wrote him a letter, and he ended up reading it on his YouTube channel. This was around 2016 or 17. And he changed some identifying characteristics, but it really scared me because I thought that somebody could still figure out it was me. And I was still working in comedy and I was representing woke comedians. And this was a letter about waking up from that ideology. So it really scared me, but I wrote him and said, thank you for reading it, but I have all this fear. And he told me, you need to get over that fear, basically. And it took me 6 more months after that until I finally, it was a long time to get through fear. It took me 6 more months until I wrote my first essay about leaving woke. And yeah, trust me, that was the short version.
Oh, no. I as I said, I'll give you all the room to run. You just run as long and far as you want to. That's the beauty of what we do. If time and bladders will hold up, we could be here all night. But that's okay.
I have a 2-hour bladder. I already warned
That's
you.
right, sister. I'm about there with you. If you're just stopping by, if you've just dropped in, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. This is the ever gracious Keri Smith from Deprogrammed. If you're not subscribed to her channels, please do so. If you're not subscribed to my channel, help a brother out. Guys, trying to build a thing here. Let's shift gears a little bit. So, social media. You've had your channel for how long now?
Well, I've started podcasting my old channel in 2018.
Okay.
So that's so I was on that until 2022, and then my partner turned out to be
Oh, yes.
not who I thought he was. So I had to start over with my new channel in 2022. So I've been
Okay.
doing this new channel Deprogrammed for a couple years now. Year and a half. I think it's a year and a half.
Yeah, about a year and a half. I remember your old partner, and to use an old Southern expression, bless his heart.
Yes.
Yeah. And if those of y'all know the multiple versions of what bless your heart means, that wasn't the kind way of saying it. Anyway, one thing that I've loved about your channel, among others, is you have one of the most friendly conversational styles that I think is coming or going in social media. And I mean that in all sincerity. It's not me trying to suck it up at anything. Where does that come from? Does that come from background? Does that come from training? Does that come from where is it that this environment is created on your channel that when people come there, even if they don't necessarily agree with you, they feel like they can walk away saying, you know what? Don't agree with her, but she was decent to me. Where does all that come from?
Well, thank you. That's very, very kind praise. No, I don't have any training. I used to be here, let me tell you, I'm afraid of public speaking. Okay. And I am at the beginning, I was afraid of podcasting.
Okay.
And my brain interprets them a little differently. So I still have fear before I get up and speak at an event. I'm going to be doing another event in Austin in April, another minds.com event. Anytime I moderate or host, I got to host last year, or if I'm speaking on a panel and there's an audience that I can see, I still have stage fright, and that's why I do it. If people ask me, I'm like, I'm there because I want to get over that. And it was the same way with podcasting at the beginning and being on a show like this. I remember the first interview somebody asked me to do after I wrote my essay about Lady Woke. Before I even had a podcast, Jamie Glazoff asked me to be on the Glazoff gang. And I thought it was so important that I do it because I needed to tell people about my old ideology and what was wrong with it. This again was 2016 or 17. And it terrified me. And I think that interview's still on YouTube somewhere, and you can see him like a deer in the headlights, like, but I'm trying to answer him. And anyway, the more I did it, the more I got over that fear. And so this is how I interact with people off camera. It's just me being myself. And I know that sounds cheesy, but that's what I tell people when they go on a show, if they're nervous or they're asking for advice or they're starting their own channel and they're nervous. And I just say to them, I know people say this all the time, whether if you're talking to a performer, a comedian, a musician, or someone public speaking, but it's true. Just be yourself. And then you don't have to worry about anything unless you're a horrible sociopath. Well, then put on the character that you do. Like a lot of people wear a character and they're really different on camera, actors, like a lot of people are like that. But if you're not like that, let's say you're a normal person, just be yourself. And to get over the fear, well, here's what I do. So the first full-on year or maybe even 2 years that I was doing my old podcast, I would pray before every show, and that prayer was related to taking ego away. And the reason I would do that prayer is because some people would say, oh, but you don't seem like you have an ego problem or whatever. Okay, but if you start to think that about yourself, well, then guess what? You might have an ego problem soon. And so if you think whatever you think is, oh, I've conquered that, when you start to get arrogance and not confidence is one thing, and knowing what you've accomplished, and that's one thing. But when you start to think, I could never be tempted by that again, or that thing could never creep up and grab me, like alcohol. I've been sober now a little over 4 years, but I know I could easily go back to that if I ever started thinking like, oh, I'm a big girl, I could have a drink now, I've conquered. No, I can't. And so anyway, I used to do this prayer. Now I have a different one, but for the first couple of years, it was, God, take away my ego and help me to say words that are pleasing to you. Help me try to say words that are pleasing to you. And you know what that did is it actually, even if you don't believe in God and you don't believe that happened, it still psychologically did something where I wasn't as nervous, because then it wasn't about me sounding smart or saying the right thing or getting it right, or it wasn't about me. Does that make sense? It sort of took the weight off. It took that weight off, where it's like, I'm just going to go out there and do my best to please God, instead of going out there to do my best to sound like the smartest person on the panel. Do you know? Or whatever. People go in with their ego and they want to come off a certain way, and they do this even off camera. I think they'll go into situations and say, if they're nervous about a social event or something. And a lot of times nerves are ego. They are, because they're very worried about how you're going to appear. And that's about you and your ego.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was a bit of a ramble. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Keri, ramble.
Okay. I'll quit singing.
Ramble and roll as much as you want. Now, the other thing that I've noticed about your show are the fans. You have one of the most eclectic collections of fans, and I mean this in the best way possible. You have one of the most eclectic collection of fans, I think, on social media. There's one group that I find particularly interesting because I have a feeling there's this very interesting subculture that goes with it. Tell me about the knitters. They seem to
Brian,
be. Oh yeah,
I love the knitters.
Tell me about the knitters. I hear you go like, knitter, please. I mean, all kinds of jokes that go with it, but I mean, are these knitters for real? Are these people knitting? Are they what is going on with these knitters? These knitting knitters?
Yeah, so on my old channel, I wanted to cover and did cover in a 3-part series, the knitting wars, social justice woking wars. And in doing so, we got an influx of viewers from that community, the knitting fellowship, but wrong knitters is what I call them, like a wrong thinker. And so, and they followed me, a lot of them, to deprogram. I'll still see knitters checking in, and some of them have become close friends, and I've been on some of their shows. There's a great show called The Politically Incorrect Knitters, with Deplorable Knitter, who's she's been called the most dangerous knitter on the internet. Deplorable Knitter and Ann Pinkova. You would love both of these ladies. You should talk to them, or you should go on Politically Incorrect Knitters. I'm a remedial knitter. So I used to knit, but it was over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe. It was back when I lived in LA. And all I ever did was ugly looking scarves. I never got to anything like a hat or a sock. I did do a hat, but it was terrible. Anyway, they don't care. They let me come on the knitting show and we knit while we talk culture and politics. And so Politically Incorrect Knitters is one. There is you would love this guy. Neil James is the editor of Blocked magazine. Now that's a pun, blocked, because blocking is something you do in knitting, but also you can be blocked on social media. A lot of these wrong knitters have been blocked, and they're on block lists. And the woke wars, as bad as you think it is, if you know about the Gamergate, as bad as you think it is in comics and comics and games and entertainment, it is way crazier in the knitting world. And yes, and there are interviews I got to do with, before I move on to the interviews. So Neil James, they call him literally Knitler. And he, which I think is a hilarious pun, and I told him, you should just own it. So he kind of laughs about it. The woke knitters call him that he's so horrible, right? So he's the editor of Blocked Magazine, where they talk about culture and they talk about the woke knitting wars, and they also present knitting designers and patterns, and that's a free magazine. You can get it online. You don't have to pay for it. You can contribute if you want, but he puts this out for free, does all this great work. He's British, he's hilarious. And then I got to interview some people who were affected by the knitting wars. Maria Tuscan from Tuscan Knits, who's just one of the kindest, speaking of gracious, most gracious, sweet souls you'll ever meet. She was one of the early targets of the knitting wars, where here's her crime, Brian. Back when they were going after people and targeting people and piling on them and trying to cancel them and get them canceled from knitting and yarn conventions and stuff. Okay. She, being a popular yarn dyer at the time, she just said in a very sweet video, I don't like all of this negativity and fighting, and I'm just not gonna, I'm gonna go offline for a while. So that was her crime. Yes. So that was her crime. And they said she was a white supremacist, that her face was glowing white in the video, that she, that silence is complicity and you won't say anything, therefore you're part of the problem. They got yarn festivals to cancel her. They put out memes about her online about how she was a white supremacist in the N word, the NAZI word. They called her like the worst things you can imagine. And she, again, if you talk to this lady, one of the sweetest people you'll meet your whole life. And she took this abuse. She had friends. So what they do in a cancel mob is, if you don't have a boss, she didn't have a boss because she was a knitting designer, and she, which is another thing, is they resent the successful designers and yarn makers. She was a yarn maker. So then they start targeting everyone she works with. If you don't denounce her, then you're complicit too. And so slowly she would have some friends making public statements against her. And it's this very isolating thing. And she went through all of that. She quit knitting for a while. She eventually, here's the positive end of this story. She came back. And after she had weathered all of that, much later, she put out a whole line of hand-dyed yarns named with woke names, like toxic masculinity is one color, or white fragility, like making fun of their words, right? And they were furious, because not only did she not go away when they tried to cancel her, but she came back with humor. And she did this kind of alchemy, spiritual alchemy, where she took their hatred and turned it into something beautiful and funny. And anyway, I got to interview people like her. I'm sorry, that was a long ramble, but there are tons of these the knitters that Murder Knits is another one. She does a knitting show with true crime. Tabitha from Murder Knits. There's just, yes, you gotta dip your toe in it. Once you have one knitter on, the other knitters will follow.
Well, after what you just described, I'm like, the only way I'm bringing somebody on is if I got a flak jacket and a helmet on, man. Because that, man, I thought regular woke warfare and everything else was crazy. Now I just been introduced to a whole other front where it's like, man, these people get some serious. I mean, we're talking knit needles and it's on, baby. I mean, good night. Woo.
And let me just say, I see some people in the chat talking about my internet. I apologize. I'm not wired because I'm not in the office yet. I'm in this temporary location. Excuse me. So I'm on Wi-Fi, and I apologize if there's problems. But
no, you're fine. You're fine. You're good. Don't worry about it. I mean, it adds to that Texas rustic charm that we're talking about. Now, I've got to ask you about Texas. I think there are truly some people that are suited to where they live. And every time, I won't say, well, let me put it this way. it seems to me from the outside looking in, you were made for the free Republic of Texas. There is something about that state and you that just seem to be well matched together. You seem at peace, you seem calm, you seem like you're having fun. There's an absolute vibe to the state of Texas that is unique. I mean, every state in America has its charm. Texas, on the other hand, is legendary for its character. So, from your perspective, what is it about Texas that drew you there? What is it about Texas that you find so appealing? And what is just like, man, I couldn't go anywhere else in the world and find this? What is it about the Lone Star State that makes it just that special to you?
I love this question because I love Texas. I I when I lived in Los Angeles, I used to visit Austin several times a year because I worked with comedians. My business partner, once I started my own company, she worked with musicians. So we were a small boutique management company. And a lot of our comics and musicians would play South by Southwest. We would be out here for ACL. We were out here for the Moon Tower Comedy Festival. So we were always coming to town for festivals. And then also when Margaret Cho would tour
Sure.
and would play one of the downtown theaters. So I was out here quite a bit. And then I had two girlfriends. I had a college friend and a science and math high school friend who lived out here. So we would do girls trips and I would come out and meet, friends we would come to Austin. Anyway, point being, I was in Austin maybe 4 or 5 times a year and I loved it. Now this was this was in the early 2000s. A lot has changed in Austin. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I felt at home. Have you ever been in a place? Is there a place for you? Maybe you weren't born there, maybe you were, but a place where when you were in that place, you felt this is home, like very at peace, as you say.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There are 2 places actually. One of them is actually when I'm in a car and it's where I'm driving to. I used to live out in Illinois for a while, and to get to Illinois from my home in West Virginia, you have to wrap around Champaign-Urbana, which is just maybe an hour inside the Illinois border, right beside of Indiana. And after I would come off the loop, and the next thing in front of me is wide open space. I mean,
Mhm.
there's nothing but land on your left, nothing but land on your right. There are no hills, there's no nothing. And there was just something about seeing that. And I'm driving in a car. It didn't matter if I had the radio on, if I had the radio off, it was just dead silent. There was just something about that scene of just wide open space. And it's just like, yeah, this is cool. This is just neat. It's like
Yes.
my father, who grew up, lived and died in West Virginia, came out to visit me one time and he looked at me and said, "Boy, I have no idea what it is you see about this place out here. There are no mountains, there are no hills, there's no nothing." I was like, "Dad, I can understand that." Hi. First of all, no, it was more like, "Hi, Dad, I'm glad to see you too." And then it was like, okay, but it's different. It's just unique, completely unique. And yeah, so I get it. When you say that you find that appealing about Texas, I totally understand what you're talking about.
And so that's one answer, is that I felt at peace here. I felt that feeling you're talking about. But then once I moved here, so I, around the same time I was leaving my old ideology, I was also going through personal upheaval. I was getting a divorce, which I think those 2 things in some ways are connected because if my whole identity and everything hadn't been razed to the ground, I don't think I would have been as open to consider raising my political beliefs and belief
Sure.
system to the ground as well. But anyway, um, when we got divorced, I never liked LA. I mean, I like LA. I like a lot of things about LA, but I didn't like living there. It didn't feel like home.
Yeah.
And my ex-husband, who is a great guy, and he loved LA. We were in LA for what he did originally, and then I started working in comedy. So anyway, when we got a divorce, I said I'm gonna move to Texas because that's where I felt at home. So, um, and then Austin quickly started to remind me too much of Los Angeles. And so I moved to Georgetown, which is beautiful and idyllic. And now Georgetown is becoming too much like Austin. And so my husband and I, we got married in 2021, and we got this old house out in the country, way outside of Austin, and it is wonderful living out here. It's just cows and a deer processing place and a Dollar General.
Oh, that's awesome. That is absolutely awesome.
And it's a cute little community, and I like being away from. I can still get to Austin pretty quickly if I need to. I can get to Waco. I can go, and I travel all over. My Saturday job has me driving all over the state. So, and my husband travels all over the state for his music. So we're out quite a bit. But having this as a home base is just, I love it. So quickly before I forget, Texas, the barbecue is great. I broke 23 years of not eating meat. Well, I was a pescatarian. I ate seafood, but I started eating other meat, red meat here. The barbecue is amazing. You can still find old dance halls, although there aren't that many in Austin, but outside there is the Broken
Yep.
Spoke and there is the White Horse. But outside of Austin, you can find a lot of these old dance halls. And people are still doing the two-step, and you can still get honky tonk, like country western swing, and not the country on the radio. If you don't know
No,
real
that's not country.
country,
That's not country music
right?
on the radio. No.
Yeah, that's crap. It's country rap.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way
And the
to describe
music's
it.
great, the food's great. The state is so big, and you know, you can drive and be in a completely different ecosystem almost and still be in the same state.
Yeah.
And there's so much history here, and there's so many beautiful things to see. And you can go down to the coast. If you want to go to the beach, you can go to the beach in Texas. If you want to
Yeah.
go to the like Paladura Canyon, that kind of desert land, you can do that. If you want to go to a quaint old town, all the old towns, a lot of them have these beautiful town squares and historic buildings and shop. I just love the aesthetic look of the old towns.
Mhm.
And have I hit everything? Oh, and I mean, come on, it's Texas. Texas is sort of like, it's not the South, it's not the North, it's its own thing.
Yeah,
Texas, yeah.
that I have always found out about. I mean, you can't call Texas the South. You can't call it the Midwest. You can't call it the Southeast. It is Texas.
Yes.
Everybody know. I mean, I think Texans believe there's some part of Genesis that's not in the Bible that says, and on the eighth day, God made the Lone Star State. And he said, I'm stopping right here. It doesn't get any better than this. I'm pretty sure Texans are convinced of this. I'm pretty sure there's some theological conventions out there in y'all state where guys are sitting around going, I'm sure it's there. It just somehow in the Hebrew, it just didn't translate through for some reason. Anyway. If you're
Yeah,
here with us,
but
go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say I was at Green with the famous historic Green Music Hall, and this is a few months ago. One of the knitters had come to visit, and we anyway, we're at Green Music Hall, and I was in this touristy kind of shop there where you could buy all kinds of cute knickknacks and gifts, and at the time they were selling Christmas ornaments. And I overheard these two tourists, and one of them said, wow, Texas sure loves putting a picture of itself on everything. And it's true. Texas, you can buy, if you go to a shop here, you're going to see the state. Our state is on everything because we love our state.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't know how many other states do that where it's they put the picture of their state on,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
ever pride,
Oh, oh, don't worry. West Virginia's got the same sort of thing. It's
Oh,
like,
really?
and look, we will bust on each other all the time. We'll make jokes about the family tree being a stick. We'll make jokes
Yes.
about one leg being shorter than the other because of the fact we got to walk up and down hills all the time. But by George, don't you dare come into our state and crack a joke about us because it is on like Donkey Kong. It's like, you heathen outsider, where are you from? And I mean, it's woo, woo, yeah, yeah. So I get it, totally get it. So if you're happen to be stopping in and daggone it, where have you been? I'm here with Keri Smith from the Deprogram channel. My name is Brian Tripp at the Front Porch Conservative, and we are just going on about any old thing that hits our head. And all right, talking about your house, there's a number of things I love about your house that you and Mr. Anthony are fixing up. But one of the things that you do in your house that I think is extraordinarily cool, and it's going to lead into a question that I've got, is you guys do a series of home concerts. And Anthony is extraordinarily, by the way, folks, if you have never heard Keri's husband's music, Anthony Garcia, please do yourself a favor, follow that man's YouTube channel, buy his music. The man is extraordinarily talented and and he's a great vocalist on top of that. But Anthony's a musician. Your good buddy Peter Feliciano, who's found his way to the Free Republic of Texas, has done, jam sessions with Anthony. You have various other people stopping in. And tell me about, how did that start? What's the genesis of that?
Well, when we got this old house, there's a lot more space than in my little house in Georgetown. I owned a cute little 1950s house before this, right on the beautiful picturesque square in Georgetown. I still love and miss that house, but this is so much bigger. And when we got married, it was sort of, oh, we need a big house because he's tall and the ceilings in those 1950s houses are pretty low. And there were a lot of room. Anyway, so this big house has a lot of rooms. It was built in 1914. It has a parlor room with 2 sets of pocket doors. And so that was one of the first 2 rooms we did in renovating it, was taking down the wallpaper, putting in a beautiful antique reproduction light fixture. We still have to finish the floors. We've sanded them, but we haven't finished them. So that's on our goal list for this month. But anyway, in that room, it just he thought he was going to have an upright piano there, but in the end, he went and splurged and got this 1940s Chickering baby grand. And so that's our piano room. And it's kind of decorated, and I don't know. I was recently told that my style is maximalist as opposed to minimalist, where, it's kind of beautiful gold, old antique frames and Victorian furniture, but mixed with some more modern kind of art pieces, and it just all mixed together. And so it's decorated in a way that I love, and we started doing shows there. He does, like I said, he plays all over Texas. He plays in Europe every summer. He plays up in Montana now quite a bit, which I love that state. But so we said, well, why don't we do house concerts here? And he knows so many talented musicians. He has one friend from Germany who is amazing on the pedal steel, violin, and guitar. And that friend comes and visits every year. So I think the first one we did was with him, or maybe the second one. So we just started selling tickets. We're limited to about 40 or 50 tickets. We take all the furniture out of that room except the piano. We fill it with chairs, and then we open the pocket doors and we stack couches in the other 2 rooms. And then people bring casseroles, they bring venison. I've had lots of people from my podcast come, the Deprogram people in the chat come, and have been able to meet people in person. And the shows are just amazing and intimate. And each one's different. Like the first one was country western. The second one, or maybe it was the first one, was he did classical piano. So he's classically trained on piano. And he had this amazing opera singer come. And so we had classical music and opera one night, and we had country western another night. We had one night that was all Latin music with just incredible musicians. So different musicians a lot of the time, and yeah, it just keeps getting. It's like a word of mouth thing. We don't put the ticket link online because it's our house. So if you're in the know, you'll get the ticket link, and then and it's like a speakeasy or a salon style.
That's cool. Now, you mentioned something, because you mentioned something about people bringing food and how they're all hanging out. This reminds me of like old family reunions. And I want to ask you about this before I get to my question about related to the concerts. How much of a sense of community is there in the town in which you reside, and is that normal in Texas in general? Here's how I define community. It's not just a group of people living in a city. It's neighbors that say, "Hey, I know this guy who lives 2 houses down from me. We've been friends for years. Our kids have played together. We've lived on this street for Lord knows how many years together." Or you see someone walking on the sidewalk, you take the time to say hello to them, or you
Mm.
invite them over to your porch or their porch, and you guys have a beverage of whatever kind it may be, and et cetera, and so on. Is there that kind of sense of community where you live? Because it sounds like, just from the way you're describing, what happens at these house concerts, that is exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
Yes. Well, let me clarify a little bit. So in Georgetown where I was living, and I live so close to Georgetown and my church is there and I'm there all the time. So I pretty much just tell people I still live in Georgetown. But
Okay.
okay, so there, yes, although it's a bigger town now, and like I said, there's a ton of Californians moving there and Austinites, and it's getting rather starting to get a little woke like Austin. Um, which I don't like. But I one of my first gig jobs there was working in a winery. So I got to meet a lot of the locals. Um, and it's a great way to meet people is work in a shop in a town. And um, and then I also, when I joined my church, that was my real community. And the people I knew through that, I still are, that's my community. Um,
Mhm.
but then when I go out, yeah, people are just, I think, friendlier here than some other places in the country. And we had a friend come and stay with us recently. So I went with my husband, his band toured Europe this past year, this fall, and I got to go with him for the whole thing, which is amazing. And I got to see places I'd never seen. But one of his friends that we always stay with in Freiburg, Germany, her son wanted to come and visit America. He's 19 years old, had never been to America. So he came like once we got back, like a month later, he came. And I think he
Okay.
noticed that friendliness, like the way that people just talk to you and even the things they say to you, like when you leave a store, they're like, "Have a good one. Have a great one." And he would say,
Yep.
"Have a great one." And he loved it.
Oh,
He
that's cool.
loved saying that, but yeah, people are friendly, and there's a coffee place in the next town over. I go to a lot of the neighboring towns too, because this is so
Sure.
small. So, and I know pretty much every person who runs an antique shop in the neighboring 6 towns, and have become friends with some of them, and, friends outside of me just buying things. And and that's easy to do because you just strike up a conversation with people here and people are interesting. I mean, you have to have an open personality too, I guess, for it to happen. But there's one place in a neighboring town where I haven't been there in a while, but I was going there pretty regularly. Let me tell you about this place, Brian. You would love this.
Go
If you
ahead.
ever come visit, I'm taking you.
Okay.
And it's in the morning. So this place, they sell coffee and they sell antiques and furniture and stuff, but they don't sell cups of coffee. They don't have their food and beverage license. They
Sure.
sell coffee by the pound and all kinds of roasted coffee. They'll make some coffee just for you to taste it so you can buy it. But for the old timers, and almost all of them are veterans or worked in law enforcement, or they're all former military. All the old timers get there early. Every morning they have coffee. They're the only ones allowed to have coffee there. They all have their own coffee mugs that hang, their personalized coffee mugs that hang, and it says these are not for sale. And they bring donuts and pastries and stuff. And so I started hanging out with these old guys. And I was like, go over there. And they told me I could bring my own coffee cup and leave it on the wall. And I'm like,
No,
I
that's
love
cool.
that. And then you're just like hearing about the news, or about also what's happening locally. And also that's where I met my friend who restored our radio.
Yeah.
Um, and it just that's I miss that. There was that sense of community when the small town I'm from in South Carolina was like that. My grandfather used to go and hang out with all the veterans and stuff. They would go to this
Yeah.
restaurant in our little town called the Bantam Chef, and they would be there every morning at 6 a.m. getting their
Yeah.
coffee and talking about the news. And so I felt really privileged that these guys would let me, because there were maybe only one or two women that you would see there, and it was like the fact that they would let me, this outsider, relative newcomer, just sort of join and talk about what's going on in the world and stuff is so kind, like such a privilege to
Yeah.
let me sit here with you once in a while.
We've
And
we've got in my area, we've got something similar. Now we've got a term for the kind of gentleman that you get to hang out with. We call them Romeos,
oh
which
yeah.
is well, and it's short for retired old men eating out. So you're
Yes.
getting to hang out with the Romeos in your area. So you just
Yes.
and these fellows will gather at the local McDonald's
Hmm.
or the local Bob Evans, which is a restaurant chain in my area.
Bob Evans. Yeah.
You hang out at Bob Evans. Of course, y'all got Buc-ee's down there, and I tell you what, when I come to Texas,
We're going to
I
Becky's.
if I do nothing else, I'm going to a Buc-ee's, and I'm gonna start going online and go, "All right, guys, I need a list of things I'm gonna get at Buc-ee's. Y'all go. Just give me a list." But yeah, it's and that same thing. They'll sit around and talk about the high school football teams.
Hmm.
They'll talk about the factory they used to work at. They'll
Yeah.
talk about, "Hey, did you see somebody's obituary in the paper?" And if you wanna know what's going on in town, just you don't need to just hang around, just be within earshot, and you'll know everything.
Yes.
It's like my dad used to tell me, he's like, "Boy, if you really want an education, go to the barbershop." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Trust me. They're all sitting around just they're pardon my language,
Yes.
they're shooting the shit. He said, "Trust me, you'll find out everything going on in town. And if you don't wanna go to the barbershop, go hang out with your mom at the beauty parlor." Yes, my dad called it a beauty parlor back in the day. This tells you how old I am.
That's what we call it. My grandma was a beautician. She had a
Yep.
beauty parlor in her house.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I get it. So, all right.
Oh, and one other quick thing about
Yes, ma'am.
community. So,
Yes.
um, my church, which I mentioned, is my pastor is brilliant. I consider this to be one of many miraculous blessings in my life that this pastor happened to be in my town.
Right.
What are the chances? And his name's Bradley Helgerson, and the church is called Church on the Square, and you can see all the sermons on YouTube. But one of the things we do that I really like, although I don't often get to go because usually they're on Saturdays, and my husband and I both work on Saturdays, but we have a church potluck every month
Oh,
at a different person's house. So you're socializing with your church family outside of just
yeah.
going seeing each other on Sunday. So Anthony and I are hosting January one. We're doing it on Friday. So, and I'm very excited about that. So you mentioned community and fellowship and stuff. And that's what that is to me. You know,
Yeah.
that's
Now, just
community.
just out of curiosity, is the church non-denominational or is it Baptist?
It's non-denominational.
Okay, good. Let me tell you something. The way you're describing it, I'd have sworn you're a Baptist because I mean, Baptists love to eat. Don't get me wrong. Baptists may do any number of different things, but I guarantee you, there's one thing Baptists do: they praise the Lord and they eat. And
Yes.
there's a lot of both going on in a Baptist church. But anyway, um, the home concerts lead me to a question, and I want to get into some cultural stuff. Nothing major, but just stuff that kind of like sits in the back of my brain marinating. I'm like, I need to talk about this with somebody. There is recently, over the past, oh gosh, call it 2 or 3 months, just various stuff. And the latest example of it, I guess, is the conservative women's calendar that was done on behalf of this beer company. Okay.
Oh
And
yeah.
oh yeah, okay. So you know what I'm talking about. And there are certain gentlemen on the right, and I'm not going to name names. I'll let they can answer for themselves. Just get all up in arms about this. Now, I've seen all the pictures of the ladies on this calendar. There's nothing untoward, very tastefully done, whatever. Here's my question, and I am loath to understand this, but your home concerts made me think of this, and I want to talk to you about it. Why is it that there are some people on the right, however you want to broadly define that? Why is it that they either don't understand the need to engage culturally, or they just when they just don't get it? It's the only way I know how to ask that question and make it sound. I mean, because I don't understand the need to just poo poo things culturally. For example, I guess and this goes to your good friend Gary Beekler from Neurotic and a bunch of other folks from FNT you've hung out with. Video games, comic books, animation, science fiction, well, whatever it may be, but in this case, a calendar. Why is it that some people on the right just get all bent out of shape over this, and they just don't understand that there are ways to engage with your culture and do it in a way that is just that's good, that's edifying. I mean, it's not even a right or left thing. It's just like, why can't we engage in this? Why can't we do this? Why can't we be a part of this?
Well, this is interesting because you and I may have a slightly different opinion on this. I haven't actually talked about this. I never tweeted once about it.
Okay.
I only talk about things I'm interested in, so I didn't talk about it. However,
And I haven't either. Just
the
is
pan
I've
which is
heard
cool
about it.
because I haven't talked about it, so and neither of you, so this will be interesting.
Yeah.
The panel, I will say this, the panel I do every other week or so, that Christian panel, this
Sure.
is one of the things we might be talking about soon, so we'll see.
Okay.
Calendar Gate is what I heard it was called. He Here's what I think about that. I think from the limited amount I read about it, that, uh, a couple of people, were asked what is their opinion on it, and they offered it. Like Bryson
Yeah.
Gray said, "I think it's demonic to
Right.
have, um, a a sexy looking photo, with a crucifix there," right? Okay, I
Okay.
don't have a problem with somebody offering that opinion, actually,
Okay.
and if I had been the person in the photo, and I love Josie, the redheaded libertarian, I've talked to
Sure.
her before, I think she's brilliant. I think she's very attractive and, smart, and she knows she's both, and it's good to know you're both. Um, but I don't think it would have become this whole, maybe I'm wrong, but I think I would have just said, "Okay, well, that's your opinion." Maybe I would have taken it personally and gone back and forth. But the thing is, I don't think that conservatives were beating the drum about it endlessly. I think that the people selling the calendars got a lot of mileage out of continuing to bring it up and continuing to talk
Okay.
about it. And so actually I was kind of laughing because I was thinking, what if they paid Bryson Gray to say that so they could really sell a bunch of calendars? I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. I don't think they really, I'm not that cynical. But I do, in the end, it was sort of like, it only becomes a thing as much as you're willing to continue to make it a thing. And no fault to them for doing that. I mean, it's great marketing. Why not use it for marketing? But I don't think it was somehow, oh, religious conservatives are losing their mind over this. I don't think they were.
Right.
I think they
Okay.
offered their opinion, and then people lost their mind over their opinion.
Okay.
Um,
Fair enough.
and so and yeah, so it can be sort of, I don't really have a side in terms of like, oh, I think this person was right or this person was wrong. I think
Sure.
some of Bryson's points were, he was saying it's clearly, it is a picture that is meant to, um, uh, evoke
Mhm.
a sexual response in a person, or an attractive, you
Okay.
were meant to invoke, and from a Christian perspective, he was saying you are invoking lust.
Okay.
Now, as far as racy images go, the one that he was making that commentary on was the least racy of all. She wasn't wearing a bikini or anything. She was wearing a nice dress. She was bending over, getting a pie out of the oven. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
attractive. It's a pinup girl calendar. That's what it's supposed to be. On the other hand, I
Yeah.
like pinup girl art. I love the art from the 50s. So, like, I kind of have a foot in both worlds sometimes, where it's sort of like I can appreciate the calendar, but I can also appreciate the point Bryson was making. Is there a degree of immodesty to that calendar? Of course, it's a pinup girl
Yeah.
calendar.
Exactly.
So anybody who's trying to say, "Oh, it's not immodest," I'm like, "Well, that's also not true." It is if you're viewing it from that,
Sure.
conservative religious perspective. And why is it a problem if somebody has that point of view? Like, does it mean you can't hang out with them, or you can't, like, I go and hang out on Friday Night Tights sometimes, and there's all kinds of blue comedy and lewd, and I have friends who are comedians. I go to the content house, it's gonna be some lewd stuff, but at the same time, you know, I don't know, I guess I don't draw friendship lines around, well, you disagree with me on this thing about whether this thing is immodest or not. And of course we might disagree because we have different belief systems. And therefore we cannot be friends. Like, I
Right.
don't get that.
Well, and maybe I picked a bad example for for where I was going with this, and I appreciate everything you said about this. Let me just broaden it out more generally. It just seems like the right, and again, however you want to broadly define that, just has a. I I don't understand the almost hesitancy, either hesitancy or outright, in some cases, just disdain for, I mean, for example, the folks from FNT. I'm not saying they're sitting around going, I don't like this person, I don't like this person, but it's like the folks from FNT and in that sphere are trying to say, look, there are people that, they play video games, they go to movies, they watch television shows, yada, yada, yada. Engage in these areas. Don't walk away from these areas. I mean, not that necessarily I'm saying, I want entertainment to be conservative or liberal or anything. It's just good entertainment, good whatever. But it seems like the right doesn't want to engage in that area, much like education. They walked away from it. Well, now there's a whole bunch of things going on there that we're reaping from, and a whole bunch of other areas where, folks on the right, again, however you want to broadly define it, have just stepped back and said, okay, we don't want to be a part of this. And I just don't understand, especially in the cultural sphere, why it is folks on the right don't want to engage in an area that frankly is just ripe for opportunity. You know, it may,
Do they not want to engage? I think they do. They just haven't, look at the Daily Wire. Look at what they're doing when it comes to TV and film. And I haven't seen Lady Ballers
now,
yet, but I want to
now
see
that
this comedy film.
I'll give you Daily Wire. Yes, I'll give you that. I'll give
I
you that
think
one.
that I think that a lot of okay, so people who score high in openness when you do the big 5 personality test, right?
Mhm.
Those people tend to fall more on the left side of the political spectrum, and people on the right tend to score higher in conscientiousness. And I remember hearing a Jordan Peterson lecture where he talked about how a good company, a good organization needs both, because you need the person with the very open person who comes up with great ideas, and you need the very conscientious, hardworking person who actually implements those ideas and gets something done with it. And that those two sides complement one another. And currently society is breaking down where this sort of this in some ways manufactured propaganda bullshit kind of tribalism, right left tribalism, is just
Mhm.
causing us to hate one another, which means everything breaks down because we can't work together. And I'm trying to see, where am I going with this? I think that yes, there are definitely more creative people who identify with the left part of the political spectrum than there are on the right. But on the right, there's a growing desire and need and interest in, I think, in creating, in making art, and specifically in making platforms and outlets for that art. So is there going to be a parallel economy at some point? I think so. I hope so. I I think that's the way it's been going. I mean, I'm trying to think of some other people who've done a great job. Eric July. I know
Yeah,
people point to him a
fantastic
lot,
example.
but with comic books, Eric July said, "Well, I'm just gonna launch my own comic book and my own comic book company," and he's killing it.
Yeah, he
He's
really is.
blowing the old comic book companies out of the water. He's doing an amazing job, and I think, we need to continue to do that in other spheres. I know Epic Mike and Josiah, they're working on
Yeah.
Epic Verse,
Yep.
which I'm very excited about, and that's gonna be series and films. Um, and there are people who are making all kinds of art and stuff. It's just growing. I don't know. We're at the beginning
Yeah.
stages. I mean, I think of my friend Clifton Duncan, who you're probably familiar with,
Oh,
who's an
yeah.
actor. Okay. So he talks about this a lot. Like, the right needs to invest in art, in the arts. And I- it it's just happening slowly.
Okay.
But they do. He's right. They do.
Yeah, I've often said I'm very happy with everything that God gave me. Of course, it's always up for improvement, but if I could trade vocal cords with anybody on planet Earth, I think it'd be Clifton Duncan. That man's got the smoothest voice I think I've ever heard in my life.
There are
It's
so many of you guys with great voices, though. You have a great voice for this.
well, thank you.
Clifton, Mystery Chris, my Wednesday night co-host, who's going to be back this Friday after an absence. Mr. Chris has a great voice. Oh, who was the other guy I was talking to recently who has a great voice? Oh, Brahma Bull even. Brahma Bull has a great voice.
Oh yeah,
There's
I
a lot
love
of guys,
Brom.
yeah.
Oh yeah. So let me ask a couple of questions and we'll start wrapping this up. So, like I said, if you just stopped by, I'm Brian Tripp at the Front Porch Conservative. This is Keri Smith from Deprogrammed. One thing that's permeated throughout this conversation is your faith, and I would expect that. I'm not surprised, disappointed, or anything else. But if you wouldn't mind, if you don't want to, it's perfectly fine. I can understand that. Your journey of faith. You came out of woke. You came to a, I guess maybe call it neutral point. But what led you on to where you are now in your faith?
Mu Much like the breakdown of my personal identity happening at the same time as the breakdown in my political and somewhat religious ideology of social justice. This sort of coincided around the same time because it creates a vacuum. If you lose a belief system, I really believe that we all worship something. I've come to believe this anyway.
Yeah,
And we all have some kind of belief system that we operate with. And if you are a person who thinks you don't have a belief system, I would urge you to watch your behaviors over a period of time, like you're an observer, to stand back and try and evaluate, like a third party, what is your system of belief. Um, and so yeah, there was a vacuum because I was leaving woke. I guess it would make sense that this would happen around the same time. But I was also going
mhm,
through a divorce, and I was grappling with all kinds of darkness, like personal darkness and
sure,
shame and guilt about things. I was still struggling with alcoholism, and I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what I believed, and I started asking questions that I had shut myself off to for decades. I started asking, is it really just like, what's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? And are we really just a physical, like, body with a
yeah,
computer brain? Is that it? Or is there something more to humanity? What is consciousness? I was reading stuff about string theory. I was trying to see what science says about it. And I was finding a lot of scientists who have become believers the more I pursued this. And I started reading some C.S. Lewis, and I started going to a place I never thought I would go. I started going to a spiritual center in Los Angeles before I left. And I was looking to see what they had to say. And it was a very new age kind of spiritual center. It's called
sure,
Agape. It's huge. It's Oprah's friends with the preacher there, Michael Bernard Beckwith. It's sort of a they bring in lots of different belief systems. There's a basis of Christianity, but there's other stuff.
sure.
And so I was going there for a while. I had an experience. The first time I was there, I had an experience with God. And it was an emotional experience. It was the kind of thing cynical me, who had been prejudiced against Christianity and God and everything for decades, like, I would never have imagined. And then I kept going back, and I started getting a little better. And then when I moved to Texas, I found a spiritual center out here that I was going to for a while. It was kind of similar, but my path of searching for truth. See, I think if you're searching for truth, you're searching for God.
Yeah,
The Bible says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the light." God is truth. God is the word. God is the light. God is all these. So if you're searching for truth, I really think that's another actual truth. That's God. And so that search for truth was leading me to God. And I was at a point where my mind was actually open for the first time in 2 decades. All that time I thought I was open-minded leftist. No, I was in a cult. I was completely closed off to the possibility of God, completely closed-minded and arrogant. And then now my mind was open, and I was like, well, let's see what happens. And so I tried out a Catholic church for a while. I was going to a cowboy church here in Texas where they're on horseback during the sermon. Um, I tried a
sounds like
couple
Texas.
different a Baptist church, like a few different places, and then I found my home and Church on the Square. And And my pastor is brilliant. He's kind of like Jordan Peterson meets C.S. Lewis. Very thought-provoking sermons, very intellectual guy who's very wise as well, not just book smart. And I can tell he's plugged into God. Like I can tell he's not an insincere person. Like there are insincere people in Christianity. And I think for a long time I let them keep me away from the possibility of God because I thought everybody was like them, con artists, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've heard that criticism of people who are non-believers. Oh, that it's not all they're trying to do is bilk money. They're not real. They're not sincere. They're hypocrites. There are a number of different things, and then they are what Lewis called surprised by joy, which was, if I remember correctly, the title of his autobiography. But
Such a great, that's a way to say it. Like when I've had that experience with God and it's happened a few more times, it's surprised by joy is the way to say it. And
yeah,
even if you were in your darkest moment, I've had things I can't explain any other way than God, where it's like the darkest moment and then God sends me joy and laughter. I one time I was sobbing. I'm not going to go into the details of the story surrounding it.
sure.
Let's just say I sobbed all through yoga class. I was that old lady crying on the yoga mat, was sobbing in the car on the way home. And then God touched me with music and just this beautiful feeling. I was just overcome by the Holy Spirit. It felt like I understood everything. I understood all this darkness I had been through. And for it was a little glimpse of God for a second of everything's fine. Like, how do I explain it to non-believers? They're going to think I'm weird no matter what. It's this feeling of complete acceptance and love from a creator who knows you from beginning to end, who knew who you were before your parents were born, who this feeling of being seen by God and loved and all the other meaningless stuff that we deal with here in our human existence. For that brief moment, if you have one of these moments, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
None of that matters.
Yeah.
And I just started bursting out laughing. I had been crying. I started bursting out laughing on the way home. If there had been a camera in that car, it would have been, who is this insane woman?
Yeah, I'd have loved to see the reaction of the other people at the red light in the other lane. They're looking over at you going, okay, one got loose from Belleville. All right, there you go. Let's make a phone call, guys.
Yes.
and she got it behind the wheel of a car. This is about to get real interesting. So,
You know, when you're going through a hard time, it's okay to be that lady that cries at the hair salon and the yoga place and the gym. I was that lady.
yeah. No, usually when I cry at a yoga place, it's because I'm in pain from trying to get into a certain position. But that's a whole different story. So there you go. Well, I'll tell you what. I got one last question, and again, your call how you want to answer this, Mr. Anthony. I'm going to say something, and I hope I'm not going to embarrass you doing it. I have seen pictures of the two of you together, and the look that you give that man is just
Aw.
extraordinary because it's like, guys, when they say death do part, that's exactly what this is going to be between these two people because they are. Look at the look on their faces when they're looking at each other. If this isn't pure love, I don't know what it is. So, and I'm again, if you want to answer this, how you want to do it's up to you. What's the backstory on how you met Anthony and who realized first, ooh, they look good. Ooh, she's cute. It's like, who put the move on who? And it's like, how did all this blossom to where it is today?
We met the old-fashioned way in a bar, like I like to say.
Well, there you go.
Not online, yes, and we were both active drinkers at the time. And, I was working, this was the winery I was working at, and he wasn't performing there that night, he was performing at a different winery across town, but I'd been hearing about him for months because it was kind of like a lot of people in Georgetown were telling me about him. "Oh, you gotta book him, he's this incredible musician." People were giving me his card and stuff. It was weird, his name kept coming up. So that night I met him and I was like, "Oh, this is that guy they're talking about." He came in towards the end and, I was thinking he's probably full of himself. But he starts playing the piano. We had a piano there, and it was beautiful. And so I was just kind of dancing around while I was doing the dishes. And then my boss at the time used to, I don't know if I should say this, who cares? He used to close on Sundays. Sometimes he would, at closing, we would have a private party for the regulars, like and we would just hang out and and so we did that night, and we closed up and we're all drinking and having fun. And he was interesting, and he was, can I tell you something really fun? I've never talked about this.
Go ahead. Go
This
ahead.
guy,
It's your story.
my ex was there. He
Okay.
also worked there.
Okay.
And 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 Anthony started doing this real alpha move, which I learned later is not natural. It's the alcohol would bring this out, and we both got sober together 6 months later. But at the time he was drinking, and it's the first night I met him, and it was funny because my ex was sitting across from me at the table, and Anthony was standing behind him, massages his shoulders and flirting with me, and like totally ignoring him, but massaging his shoulders, and he was all, "What's going on?" Like, it was totally, completely emasculated.
Oh boy.
And that was really funny. Oh no, Dave said that my audio is no good on his end.
Oh
I'm sorry.
no.
But I'll try and not get too close. But so then that night he was like, "Hey, I'd like to kiss you." And I was like, "Well, not in here, because I work here," even though we were closed and partying, right? But I was like, I have to take the trash out. So if you want to come out. So he kissed me by the dumpster.
That's a true romantic setting. Okay.
I forgot this part of the story. You reminded me of this the other day. So we kissed me by the dumpster. And then it was sort of, I at the time was a pretty new Christian, and I had certain ideas about who I should date. And so at first I really was not, I was being too controlling. It's weird. If you're a new believer, maybe this will resonate with someone. I had come to the understanding that I don't always make the best choices, which I think is a good place to be, to learn that, right? And I had decided I was going to let God make the choices and lead me, which is good. But then I started dictating in my journal what God wanted for me. And I was very much like, well, I guess he has to check off this box and this box and this box. And so Anthony was agnostic, and I'm like, well, I'm not going out with you because you're not a Christian. And so I didn't understand. And I'm now fully convinced God put us together. Absolutely. We got sober together. We had each struggled with drinking individually before meeting each other for decades. And I had tried to quit so many times, and we quit together. And then we went through this period of sort of, we've had in the first few years, even of being together, we've come through some really tough times. There was a time he broke up with me for 2 weeks before he proposed. And I remember thinking at that time, I was devastated, but I was also I knew I wasn't going to go back to drinking. And I thought, I was praying a lot and I was journaling a lot and I was sad, but I was like, God, selfishly, I really want him in my life for longer. But if the only reason you put him in my life was to help me quit drinking, thank you. Like, that's enough.
Okay.
That is enough. And not being willing to, to be okay with that, I think is sort of something I've learned with Christianity, of not putting anyone above God. I had to learn it again, though. I had to learn it again. Because, we all have, I think some of us have the same lesson we're being taught over and over by God or the universe, however you want to think of it, until we get it. And that was one of a recurring one for me, is don't put any human being above God. Be willing to sacrifice everything. Mm-hmm. If you say there's a person I can't live without, or a job I can't live without, or whatever, and you're a Christian, well, you've probably you've put that person ahead of God. Yeah. And God had to teach me that in a painful way, because I didn't learn it the first few times. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. Dumpster kissing is hot, says one of people.
I was going to say, I saw this. It's how it all begins. Kiss her out by the dumpster. There you go. So Let
me tell you where he proposed at the grocery store.
Well, he realized he had to step up his game from the dumpster. So, yeah, naturally, the grocery store is the next step. There you go. Right up from the dumpster, straight to the grocery store. There you go, folks. See, you come to the electronic front porch, you get all kinds of things. Dating tips, where do you propose to the person you're interested in? You get all kinds of stuff. What can we tell you? So I'll tell you what have you got coming up? What's going on with you? Where can people find you? This has been, look, you got a standing invitation. You message me and you say, Brian, I want to talk about something. Like, give me a day. When do you want to come on? You got carte blanche. You got carte blanche on the front porch, dear. You're welcome here anytime you want. So what do you
next time we meet, you should be on my channel. Let's do that.
Well, we'll make it work somehow. So yeah, tell people where they can find you. Where are you at on social media? Because people, I'm telling you, if you're not following this lady, you are missing out. We work two different sides of the street. I work the political, sometimes touch on the cultural. This lady touches on the cultural and the social, and I'll make an argument, and I'm not humble bragging here. The work she's doing on her channel is extraordinarily important to the times in which we find ourselves. And if you're not following what she's talking about, you're missing out. So where can people find you? Where can they get tuned into what you're talking about?
You can find me at Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. That's Keri. And pretty much everywhere the handle is real Keri Smith, Keri. And what do I have coming up? Well, I'm going to finish my studio this coming week, and we have tomorrow, Friday. Man, I'm losing track of time. My co-host on Wednesday nights is one of my best friends, Mystery Chris. He's been out for a while, and the big return is tomorrow instead of Wednesday night. We're going to do it live tomorrow, Friday at 1:00 Central, and we are doing. People know him. He's such a funny, smart guy. He knows everything about the entertainment world, and we're doing a best of and worst of 2023, even though it's a little bit late because he's just getting back. He always puts together the best presentations. So that's tomorrow. And then Monday I'm interviewing, oh gosh, I'm going to mispronounce his name. I always mispronounce it. Demangini. Yes.
Demanjani. Okay, cool.
Demanjani. Will you write that out phonetically for me?
I think I can do something with that. Hang on.
I've been corrected so many times. Okay, but that's happening. Let's see what else. If you were in the Houston, Texas area, my husband's playing the Mucky Duck. His full band is playing on March 1st. And you should come out. That's going to be a great show. We want to get a lot of people there. Come say hello if you're in Houston. March 1st, you can find out more info at anthonygarciamusic.com. And then also every Sunday this month, his whole band is playing Lukenbach. So if you've never been to the famous Lukenbach, Texas, from the song Waylon and Willie and the Boys, this would be your chance to experience Lukenbach. And that's every Sunday, 1 to 5. And yeah, that's it. I think that's
only two things make life worth living. Are firm feeling let's see, guitars tuned right and firm feeling women. Don't need my name in the Broadway lights. I got you and I got my music tonight. Maybe it's time we got back to the basics of love.
I can't sing, but I love to sing, but I can't sing.
Oh, yeah. And I tell you, the story of how those two characters, Waylon and Willie, got together years ago, you want some real funny. It's just hysterical. Anyway, with that, folks, we're going to wrap it up because bless our hearts, we're about up to the 2-hour limit for both of us, and we'll just leave it right there. I'm going to be back Saturday morning with Front Porch Brunch, where we do a little review of the news. Monday evening, I'm going to be live streaming coverage on the Iowa caucus, and we'll be doing a wrap-up session on Tuesday. And then next Thursday, we're going to be back for Chattin on the Porch. And I can go ahead and announce it because I got the confirmation today. My guest will be Gothics. So,
oh yay! I love Gothics.
Oh yeah, she's just 7 kinds of cool. I mean, I tell you what.
Fun.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So anyway, folks, thank you so much, Keri. Hang on for 1 second. We'll say some proper goodbyes. Thank you guys for stopping by for Chatting on the Porch, and for those of y'all, I hope to see you Saturday morning. Bye bye.